Joshua chapter 22. I want to take this chapter in three sections tonight. We are going to read it. This is a shorter section that we're tackling, so we do have time to be able to read all of it. But chapter 22 is sort of the beginning of the end. All right, this is the last corner coming down the home stretch that starts in Genesis chapter 22. And so the last three chapters of Joshua, I keep saying Genesis, the last three chapters of Joshua all start with Joshua speaking. And so he's going to speak at the beginning of 22, the beginning of 23, and the beginning of 24. And he's going to address three groups of people. We're going to look at the first one tonight. And Joshua 22, he is addressing the three eastern tribes. We've already spent some time talking about Reuben, Gad, and the half tribe of Manasseh. That was in a previous study. So Joshua addresses those groups tonight. Next week, he's going to address the leadership of Israel. And then the last chapter before he dies, he'll address the congregation. All right, so things are sort of narrowing down a little bit. The wars have stopped. The land has been conquered and then divided. And so Israel has settled in now. And after all of the battles and all of the fighting now is over, these three tribes who, remember, who are on the eastern side of Jordan, they're going home. And they've helped the other tribes conquer the land. They've done their part. But now they're going to be returning back to their home on the other side of the Jordan. And Joshua has something to say to them before they go. All right, so we're going to look at, you got your handouts. Hope you got a pen that works well, because there's a lot to write down tonight. Here's the first thing that I want us to see in Joshua 22, that we should commend obedience. Not command, but commend. We should commend obedience. I want us to look at the first 8 verses as we study this. Okay, verse 1. At that time, Joshua summoned the Reubenites, the Gadites, the half tribe of Manasseh, and said to them, "You've kept all that Moses, the servant of the Lord, commanded you, and you've obeyed my voice in all that I have commanded you. You have not forsaken your brothers these many days, down to this day, but have been careful to keep the charge of the Lord your God. And now the Lord your God has given rest to your brothers as he's promised them. And so therefore turn and go to your tents, or go to your homes, in the land where your possession lies, which Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave you on the other side of the Jordan. Only be very careful to observe the command and the law that Moses, the servant of the Lord, commanded you, to love the Lord your God, to walk in all of his ways, to keep his commandments, to cling to him and to serve him with all of your heart and with all of your soul." So Joshua blessed them and sent them away, and they went to their tents. Now to the one half of the tribe of Manasseh, Moses had given a possession in Bashan, but to the other half, Joshua had given a possession beside their brothers in the land west of the Jordan. And when Joshua sent them away to their homes and blessed them, he said to them, "Go back to your tents with much wealth and with very much livestock, with silver, gold, bronze, and iron, and with much clothing. And then divide the spoil of your enemies with your brothers." All right, so here's Joshua sending them home, and he is commending them. He's bragging on them. He is commending them for their faithful service in all that they had done with conquering the land and helping the brothers, as he mentions here. So he praised them for keeping their promise to Moses. He praised them for fighting alongside their brothers. He praised them for remaining faithful all the many years that they were there. And then also he praised them for putting the needs of the nation above their own. And that sort of harkens back to the lesson that we had a few weeks ago about these three tribes. Remember, they did not want to go over into Canaan. They wanted to stay in their home. And Joshua said, no. You're part of us as well. You're going to come with us. All right, so he praised them for that. Joshua released them. He said, we're done, you're good, now you can go home and settle. But he released them with 6 commands. And I want us to look at and identify what those are. So I think beginning in verse 5, I want you to write down what those commands are. There were 6 things that he told them to do as they returned home. We're going to put them on the screen, but I want to give you just a second to look through the scriptures right there and identify these 6 things that he mentions. So take just a second and do that. All right, most of you probably have at least most of them. All right, you may not have all 6, but let's identify where they are. They're just written down. All right, so the first one he tells them is to keep God's commandments. All right, so that's right there. Make sure that when you go back home, you don't forget to keep God's commandments. The second thing he commands them to do is to walk in his ways. Okay? Now, some of your translations may word this a little differently, and that's okay. You go with what is out of your translation. The third one is just obey him. Okay? Hopefully you're seeing a pattern here. All right, the fourth one is to hold fast to him. Your translation may say that a little differently, but it has the idea of staying close. And then number 5 is to serve him. And number 6 is to love him. So these are the 6 things that Joshua commands these tribes to remember to do when you go back home. Now, when I read that list of things right there, that is a perfect description of what the life of a Christian looks like. Right? This is what it means to follow God. So if we ever want, do I have a relationship with God? Am I saved? Have I been born again? What about a loved one or friend or others that say, well, what is a Christian? What does a Christian look like? What is a picture of a Christian? Well, this is a great description of what our lives are to look like. And all of these things have to do with obedience. All of them. Obedience could be the banner underneath all of these things. This is what obedience looks like. And remember, obedience is one of the key evidences that we have been saved. If you love me, Jesus said, you will obey me. Now, we're not perfect at obedience. Oftentimes we fail to do that, but by and large, this describes our life. This is what the life of a Christian looks like. Now, I've got a question underneath those 6 things. What are some things that often cause us to drift away from doing these 6 things? They're all a part of obedience, but serving him, loving him, walking in his ways, holding fast to him, keeping his commandments. What are some things that happen in life? Whether you've experienced it in your own life or maybe a close friend. What are the things in life that cause us to drift from doing these things and making sure these things are in our lives? Yep. Unforgiveness. Okay, unforgiveness. Yep, one of the most common sins of that we deal with. Sometimes we don't often see. But unforgiveness keeps us from obeying God and walking in his steps. What else? Pride. Busyness. What else? Anger. Sin. That's right. Yeah. What else? A hardened heart. Sure. Yep. That's right. Yep. Anything else? What causes people to drift away from remaining obedient?
Not staying in the Word.
Okay. All right. So, not staying in the Word. Anything else?
Selfish desires.
Selfish desires. That's right. What is that?
Backsliding.
Backsliding. Yes, that's true. That's right. What about suffering? What about sickness? I know a lot of people that suffer. And a lot of times when we encounter a health problem, many times we'll take a step back. We'll, for whatever reason, we may not understand what's going on, or we just don't feel ourselves. Maybe we're angry at God over what is going on. It could be grief. Loss. It could be a lot of things. And the enemy will often use all of these hard things, especially sin. One of the things that makes the devil so wicked, and wicked is the right word to describe him. The enemy will tempt you with a sin, and he'll say, "Hey, this is okay for you to do this, and it's it's not that bad, and you deserve this." And he'll hold it out in front of you and say, "This is all right. You need to, you can do this, and it's not be that big a deal." And the moment that you grab it and commit to it, he'll take the same thing that he offered you with, and then turn it around and beat you up with it. And say, what kind of person are you that you would do that? And how can you love God and sin like that? And how can you? He is so subtle and clever in how he uses hardships and difficulties, and especially those areas of sin that we encounter. And all of those things will make you drift. They will silently and slowly pull you away from obedience to God. So we need to be reminded of how important it is that God calls us to obey. Joshua commended these tribes because they obeyed well. They did all that God had required of them, and we can encourage one another. When we're serving well, or loving well, or teaching well, or giving well, or whatever it is that is going on. Whenever we have people around us that are walking with the Lord and holding fast with the Lord and growing in their faith, we can commend them. It's an occasion of encouragement to people to do that. All right, so that's the first thing, that we should commend obedience. The second thing we're going to look at in the second section here is that we should never make assumptions about others. So let's go back, write that in, and then go back to the text, and let's pick up in verse 9. All right? Never make assumptions about others. So the people of Reuben and the people of Gad and the half-tribe of Manasseh, they returned home, departing from the people of Israel at Shiloh, which is in the land of Canaan, to go to the land of Gilead, their own land, of which they had possessed themselves by command of the Lord through Moses. And when they came to the region of the Jordan, that is, in the land of Canaan, the people of Reuben and Gad and the half-tribe of Manasseh, they built an altar by the Jordan, an altar of imposing size. And then the people of Israel heard that it was said, "Behold, the people of Reuben and Gad and Manasseh, they've built the altar at the frontier of the land of Canaan, in the region about the Jordan, on the side that belongs to the people of Israel." And when the people of Israel heard about this, the whole assembly of the people of Israel gathered at Shiloh to make war against them. All right, so they're ready to fight these three tribes that just left. And so then verse 13, the people of Israel sent to the people of Reuben and Gad and Manasseh and the land of Gilead, they sent Phinehas, the son of Eleazar the priest. And with him they sent 10 chiefs, one from each of the tribal families of Israel, every one of them the head of a family among the clans of Israel. They came to the people of Reuben and Gad and Manasseh in the land of Gilead, and they said to them, "Thus says the whole congregation of the Lord, what is this breach of faith that you have committed against the God of Israel in turning away this day from following the Lord by building yourselves an altar in rebellion against the Lord? Have we not had enough of the sin at Peor, from which even yet we've not cleansed ourselves, for which there came a plague among the congregation of the Lord, that you too must turn away this day from following the Lord? And if you too rebel against the Lord today, then tomorrow he'll be angry with the whole congregation. But now, if the land of your possession is unclean, pass over into the Lord's land where his tabernacle stands. Take for yourselves a possession among us. Only do not rebel against the Lord or make us rebels by building for yourselves an altar other than the altar of the Lord our God. Verse 20, did not Achan, the son of Zerah, break faith in the matter of the devoted things, and did not wrath fall upon the congregation of Israel? And did he not perish alone for his iniquity? Okay, so what did the western tribes, what did they believe about the eastern tribes? Just summarize that. We just read what was going on. What did the western tribes believe was happening with the eastern tribes?
The Western tribes got their exercise by jumping to conclusions.
Okay, good. They got their exercise by jumping to conclusions, and that's exactly right. What did they conclude? What did they believe?
Rebellion against God's law.
Okay, they believed that these tribes who just left were acting in rebellion against God and against Israel by what? What did they do? They built an altar. A very large altar next to the Jordan River before they crossed over to go into the land there. So Israel sees this and hears this, and they're ready to fight. They're, let's call a business meeting. It's time to, it's time to throw down. What are you doing? They wanted to confront them. But instead, they believed that. They made that assumption that this altar was being built in rebellion. But instead of going to war, picking up their sword, they asked Phinehas, and we've already heard about Phinehas, the son of Eleazar. He was involved in the sin at Peor, and we'll talk about that in a second. They asked him to go investigate. Go find out what this is. So we'd rather not fight first. We'd rather find out what they're doing and why they're doing this. So they raise up this delegation and they send this group of people over there to ask them. Now, there were two disastrous events that were referenced in verses 16 through 20. They're fairly easy to see. There are two things that they mention there. What were they? Okay, all right. So one of them was the sin of Achan, who took the devoted things from Ai. That's back in chapter 7, right? So the sin of Achan. What was the other disastrous event that Phinehas mentioned here? The plague, and that was, where was that at? Starts with a P. I already said it. Peor. Okay? So these are the two things that he mentions. So the sin of Peor, which is in Numbers 25, and the sin of Achan, which is in Joshua 7. If you don't know this dude Phinehas, this is a bad dude. All right? Wholly devoted. He was a warrior for the nation of Israel. If you remember, if you don't know the story in Numbers 25, that the people of Israel, I can't remember the exact tribe, but some of the men in Israel started to intermarry with some of the pagan nations. They were taking some pagan women as wives and bringing them into the nation of Israel, which is a no-no. And that was strictly forbidden. God did not want that to happen. Phinehas grabs his spear and he walks into a tent where there's an Israelite man and a pagan woman, and he puts a spear through both of them. And there was a plague that had come on the nation of Israel because of their disobedience. And Phinehas just, said, hey, we're not going to do that. So what Phinehas is doing by mentioning these two things is saying, look, we've been here before. What are you doing? Why are we disobeying? Like, what is this altar about? And he's reminding them of these two things. Look, he says we're still suffering from some of the things that we did that were disobedient. So instead of assuming, though, they send this group down there. And before we sort of look at the end of this, it's just a great reminder that this is this highlights why it is so dangerous for us to assume the motives of other people without knowing what they are. Right? And this can this can happen to us. This may have already happened to you in some cases. We can assume things about people without really understanding what's going on. And the principles that we read here is that instead of making war and getting upset and whatever, like, let's go find out. Let's go confront. Let's go ask. Let's find out instead of assuming all of these things. I think a lot of church conflict, and I've been through church conflict. Some of you may have been through some church conflict. It starts with assumptions. We have to be careful that we don't assume. And I know Evan Sturin wants to give us a definition of what happens when we assume, but we're not going to talk about that. We all know, I think, what happens when we assume. But this is how conflict starts, right? Somebody says something, somebody misunderstands or mishears what they say, right? We assume certain things, and then all of a sudden there's back and forth, and relationships start to suffer. I think sometimes, listen, we can assume things without even knowing that we're assuming things. We can say things, listen, we can say things and we can mean something, but it is taken by others to be something totally different than what we intended to mean. This happens all the time. I love looking at, I got some pictures I want to see you. I love looking at funny church signs. Y'all seen some of these? All right. And I want to show you a few that whoever put this message on the sign meant one thing, but they assumed that the readers who would see it would understand what it is. And it didn't happen. All right? So, y'all may have seen some of these before. Have y'all seen this one before? Don't let worries kill you. Let the church help. And whoever wrote that was saying that, hey, if you're worried, the church can help you with your work. But they assumed that people would understand that. I love this next one. I wish I could find out what this is. A little blurry. I have a feeling that that's not the message that they intended, to convey. And then, we're going to be gone next week. And I thought about this is a funny one too. Now is a good time to visit our pastors on vacation. So I don't know exactly what y'all don't put that sign out front, okay? But we can say something and just assume that people understand what we meant. But sometimes the message gets, tangled up. And the lesson here is like when we see or, something or hear something, it isn't, hey, let's pick up our sword and go to war. It's, let me go to my brother. Let me go to my sister. Let's send a group of people. Let's go and find out what's really going on. And what we're going to discover is it wasn't what they thought, right? It was completely different than what they assumed. So I love Ephesians 4:3. Be diligent to preserve the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. Be diligent means work hard. Work hard to preserve the unity. That's not just for Israel. That's for Cedar Creek. Work hard to preserve the unity that we have. And so we do that by not making assumptions. Last thing, number 3, just very simply, we should extend grace to one another. Okay, we see this. Let's look at verse 21 and read the rest of this. We should extend grace to one another. Pick up there, verse 21. Then the people of Reuben, Gad, and Manasseh, in answer to the heads of the families of Israel, this is what they said: the mighty one, God, the Lord. The mighty one, God, the Lord, He knows. And so let Israel itself know. If it was in rebellion or in breach of faith against the Lord, do not spare us today for building an altar to turn away from following the Lord. In other words, you can take our lives if that's what we were doing. Or if we did so to offer burnt offerings or grain offerings or peace on it, may the Lord himself take vengeance. No. But we did it from fear that in time to come your children might say to our children, what have you to do with the Lord, the God of Israel? For the Lord has made the Jordan a boundary between us and you. You people of Reuben and people of Gad, you have no portion in the Lord. In other words, they're saying that there's going to come a time when children say, y'all are way over here. Y'all have nothing. Y'all are not a part of Israel. And so these tribes are saying, we don't want that to happen. So your children might make our children cease to worship the Lord. And so because of that, we said, let us now build an altar, not for burnt offering or sacrifice, but let this be a witness between us and you, and between our generations after us, that we do perform the service of the Lord in his presence with our burnt offerings and sacrifices and peace offerings. So your children will not say to our children in time to come that you have no portion in the Lord. And so we thought, if this should be said to us or to our descendants in time to come, then we should say, behold, the copy of the altar of the Lord which our fathers made, not for burnt offerings or sacrifice, but to be a witness between us and you. Far be it from us that we should rebel against the Lord and turn away this day from following him by building an altar for burnt offering or grain or sacrifice other than the altar of the Lord our God that stands before his tabernacle. Verse 30, and so when Phinehas the priest and the chiefs of the congregation, the heads of the families of Israel who were with them, when they heard the words that the people of Reuben, Gad, and Manasseh spoke, it was good in their eyes. And Phinehas, the son of Eleazar the priest, said to the people of Reuben, Gad, and Manasseh, today we know that the Lord is in our midst, because you have not committed this breach of faith against the Lord. And so now you have delivered the people of Israel from the hand of the Lord. And so then Phinehas and the chiefs, they returned from Reuben and Gad and the land of Gilead. They returned to Canaan, to the people of Israel, and they brought back word to them. And the report was good in the eyes of the people of Israel. And the people of Israel blessed God and spoke no more of making war against them to destroy the land where the people of Reuben and Gad were settled. The people of Reuben and the people of Gad called the altar Witness. If your translations there have a capital W, that's the name of the altar. They called it Witness because they said it is a witness between us that the Lord is God. Okay, so the eastern tribes answer. They hear this accusation. They answer Phinehas. It's not for sacrifices. It's not for rebellion. It's not for some separate religion. That it was a memorial for future generations. It was just because of the distance. They were separate from the rest of the tribes. And so these eastern tribes were trying to make sure that future generations would not think that they're not a part of Israel. Okay? So there's a lot to think about. Now there's some great lessons to learn in this. I think one is that their distance, these three eastern tribes, y'all know the map. We've looked at the map extensively. They're separate away from all of the other tribes. Their decision to separate themselves is going to lead to disaster. I'm going to show you a scripture in 1 Chronicles 5 in just a minute where these three tribes, because they were further away from Israel, they were closer to pagan nations. And the influence of these pagan nations, because they were separate from Israel, would start to influence what they would do. So they're kind of out here on their own. It reminds me a little bit of what happens when we try to live in isolation from the people of God. We need the church. We need one another. We are called into a family, into relationship. No such thing as Lone Ranger Christian. I'm good by myself. I don't need anybody else. That is in direct violation of what we read about in the pages of Scripture. We do not need to isolate ourselves. I know this might be a little hard to read. I try to put it all on one screen, but you can write the reference down. I just want to read it to you. This is about these three tribes. The members of the half tribe of Manasseh lived in the land. They're very numerous, from Bashan to Baal Hermon, Seir, and Mount Hermon. These are the heads of their fathers' houses: Ephir, Ishi, Eliel, Azriel, Jeremiah, Hodaviah, and Jadiel. Mighty warriors, famous men, heads of their fathers' houses. But they broke faith with the God of their fathers, and they whored, that is a strong word, they whored after the gods of the peoples of the land, whom God had destroyed before them. And so the God of Israel stirred up the spirit of Pul, king of Assyria, the spirit of Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria, and he took them into exile, namely the Reubenites, the Gadites, and the half-tribe of Manasseh. And he brought them to Halah, Habor, Harah, and the river Gozan to this day. That's in the land of Assyria. So it was a disaster for them to separate themselves from the tribe of Israel because of the influence of the nations around them. And they were the first to be conquered. They were the first to go into exile from the land of people of Syria. So what's the lesson? Man, stay close to God's people. We're not perfect. All right? We get a little messy sometimes. Stay close to God's people. All right? There is some, you watch nature shows and you see lions and tigers and leopards and cheetahs and they're hunting. They go after that one that is off by themselves. They find a weak one, a small one. They can isolate that one. It's game over. You don't think the enemy works like that? He does. And he will bring in assumptions and misunderstandings and complaints, and he will use anything and everything that he can for you to say, you know what? I don't think I want to go to church anymore down there. That preacher didn't talk to me when I came to church on Sunday. That preacher, he preached really hard, and he looked right at me like he stepped, my toes are hurting, or y'all don't understand. When I preach, I look in a mirror. I'm preaching to myself, first of all. This is the last thing I want us to think about. Where there is much grace, there is much unity. Man, there was some grace lavished on the Reubenites, Gadites, and Manasseh. And because of that grace, man, they were unified. They went back, the report was good. And there was no war, there was no conflict. And the Lord blessed them during that time. So on your handouts, we close with this. Unity requires patience, forgiveness, humility, and desire for truth. It's all well and good to sit here on Wednesday night and say, I want unity. Awesome. It's going to require you to be patient. It's going to require you to forgive. It's going to require you to humble yourself. It's going to require you to be truthful about things. I think we all face misunderstandings and false assumptions, and the answer to that is not gossip. It is not suspicion. It is not division. It is not whisper. Well, what do you think about, or how did? Be very, very careful with gossip. Man, the enemy loves gossip. The enemy has ears too. And he hears every word. He hears every word. So we don't want false assumptions. We want to preserve our unity, and that requires honest conversation, humility, truth. All of those things are demonstrations of love, right? That's ultimately what it is. It's loving one another, which is what we're required to do. Okay, next week, Joshua 23. Okay, so I'm so thankful for Jerry, who will be here. Please come. Please be here to study, but also for Jerry's sake as well. I know he's looking forward to that. And he's going to have, much like this, he'll have handouts. He'll go through chapter 23, and it might even be better than mine. So good. I want it to be. So be ready for that. All right. I'm going to pray for us. There's still a little bit more cake back there, and then okay, good. We can get that out too if we need to, and then make sure you get some vegetables. Okay. All right. Let me pray for us, Father.